Elena's gloved hand shot across the aisle before she even realized what she was doing. 1 second, the toddler was fussing with the rose gold band on her wrist. The next, Elena had yanked it off Ella's arm. The moment her fingers closed around the smooth plastic, a high-pitched chime echoed through the cabin. Every face turned toward the chase. An innocent sound turned alarm. On the little screen built into Ella's seatback, a banner flashed bright red. Emergency alert. SafeKids band activated. Elena froze. Her heart thundered in her chest. The ritual "no loose devices" speech she delivered a dozen times dissolved in her throat. Instead, she stared in horror as that same red glow pulsed on every bulkhead monitor, on every passenger's tablet, then across town at HorizonWave's London headquarters, where CEO David Whitfield's morning meeting screeched to a halt. In first class's charity lounge, rows of cream leather seats fell silent. A woman in a tailored suit clutched her champagne flute mid-sip. A diplomat froze, passport in hand. Even the flight attendants, always poised, exchanged wide-eyed looks. Little Ella blinked up at Elena, confusion and fear mingling in her round cheeks. The band on her wrist had been a simple safety measure, HorizonWave's $5 million pilot project to give parents peace of mind. Instead, it had become the most powerful object in the plane. "Ma'am," Elena managed, voice trembling. I'm so sorry, I thought." Ella's mother, Maya Whitfield, rose smoothly from her seat. Her presence snapped the cabin's tension into a pinprick of stillness. Maya's gaze was calm, authoritative, as she approached. The woman tugged at the sleeve of her designer coat and pointed at the band. "That's HorizonWave's SafeKids band," Maya said softly, but firmly. "It's approved. Please let her keep it." Across the aisle, Bradley Cooper's voice crackled through Elena's earpiece. "Stand down," he ordered. "It's part of the charity mission." Elena swallowed hard and offered a stiff nod. She forced herself to step back, careful not to jostle Ella. In the back of her mind, a question burned. How many seconds until the executives at HQ realized exactly what had happened? At the head of the plane, David Whitfield stared at his tablet, mouth slack. The live feed from Ella's band had popped up on his screen with a flash. He watched Elena's hand close around the wristband, saw the red banner appear. It was as if he were sitting in row 1A himself. Coffee trembled in his fingers. Maya crouched beside Ella, smoothing the toddler's hair. "Sorry about that, sweetheart," she whispered. "Just a little glitch." Ella whimpered, eyes brimming with tears. The toddler wasn't hurt, but she was frightened by the sudden flash of panic all around her. She reached out a pudgy hand to Elena. "Sorry," Elena murmured, voice low. She removed her glove with shaking fingers and gently patted Ella's hand. "Are you okay?" Ella sniffled, then nodded, wrapping her free arm around Maya's finger. Elena gave her a small, grateful smile, an admission of defeat, but also of relief. The cabin's hum returned, slower this time, as everyone adjusted. Flight attendants began discreetly checking that no other prohibited gadgets were in use. Passengers offered courteous nods, but kept their eyes on the little band, now glowing a soft green again. Elena retreated to her station, rubbing her thumb over her forehead. In the galley doorway, she paused and exhaled a long, trembling breath. She had followed the rules, and nearly triggered a corporate meltdown. From the cockpit, the captain's voice floated back. "Everything all right back there?" Elena straightened her posture. "Yes, Captain. False alarm. All under control." But she knew the truth. Nothing on this flight would ever be under control again. The SafeKids band had done its job, protected the child and exposed a blind spot in Elena's world. She'd wielded authority without fully understanding its reach. Maya returned to her seat, smoothing Ella's blanket. She tapped her phone, sending a quick text. "Alert resolved. Band approved. Stand down." Within seconds, the red banners blinked off everywhere. Ella yawned, fatigue settling in after the adrenaline. Maya tucked the blanket under her chin. "Time for a little nap, my love?" The toddler nodded, eyes drifting shut. Maya leaned back, brushing a strand of hair from her daughter's forehead. Elena watched them for a moment, mother and child. Safe at last. She fitted her glove back on and picked up her service tray, mind racing with questions. How had HorizonWave built this system? Who decided it would stream straight to the CEO? And what would happen next, now that millions of dollars in corporate reputations had been put on live display because of one impulsive tug? As the plane roared down the runway, Elena steeled herself. She knew there was no going back. The rest of the flight, and everything that followed, would be defined by that moment. A young flight attendant, a terrified toddler, and a rose gold bracelet that refused to be ignored. For Ella, it was just another day's magic. For everyone else on board, it was a wake-up call. In the world of power and protocol, compassion and technology could collide in the most explosive way. Elena stood just outside the galley doorway, her back pressed against the cool bulkhead as she sucked in a steadying breath. Her navy cap was still perfectly in place, and the wings pinned to her lapel gleamed under the low cabin lights. She smoothed the sharp crease in her skirt with one gloved hand, then tapped her earpiece, just as she'd done 1,000 times before, in silent affirmation that she was on duty, focused, in control. But control had slipped through her fingers in a blink. She let her gaze wander down the aisle, catching sight of Maya Whitfield settling Ella back into the plush cream leather. Maya's posture was impeccable, shoulders back, chin lifted ever so slightly, the very picture of composed authority. Beside her, little Ella's wristband glowed a gentle green, a beacon of safety in this floating world. Elena's chest tightened at the sight. She lived for order, for the seamless choreography of a first-class cabin. No loose devices, no surprises. She'd worked hard to earn her place among HorizonWave's top attendants, and she'd never let a single rule slip. Back in Cleveland, Ohio, Elena had been the kid with a suitcase half her size and a scholarship to flight school. She'd grown up believing that if she followed every regulation, polished her shoes until they shone, and learned every emergency protocol by heart, no one could accuse her of incompetence. Protocol was her shield against the world's unfairness. After all, she'd seen how quickly a passenger's glare could turn hostile if a tray table rattled or a seatbelt clicked loose. To Elena, discipline wasn't just procedure. It was respect for everyone on board, from the billionaire seated in 1A to the mother soothing her toddler across the aisle. So, when the SafeKids band had lit up like a warning siren, streaming every second to the CEO's tablet back in London, Elena's world had gone from black and white to blaring red in an instant. Her first reaction, snatch the device, enforce the rule, had been instinct. But underneath that reflex lay years of conviction, that rules existed to protect dignity, to maintain peace. Pulling on Ella's band had felt like gripping a live wire, and for a heartbeat, Elena wondered which was more dangerous, a toddler's gadget, or the panic it had unleashed. Across from her, Maya leaned down to check Ella's blanket. As the airline's founder and chairwoman, Maya had built HorizonWave on the promise that technology could marry comfort with compassion. The SafeKids initiative, her brainchild, had been seeded with a $5 million grant to reassure parents on long-haul flights. Now, that very investment was flickering under Elena's gloved fingers, reminding her that even the best intentions could backfire. Maya glanced up at Elena with an expression that didn't blame. Her eyes were steady, thoughtful, exactly the kind of calm that had inspired headlines when HorizonWave launched its diversity workshops. She gave a single, subtle nod, as if to say, "I understand." In that moment, Elena saw more than the airline's president. She saw a mother determined to protect her child. Ella, meanwhile, fussed at her blanket for a second before the dip of Maya's hand reassured her. The toddler's dark curls slipped over her forehead as she peered curiously at Elena. uncertain whether this uniformed woman was friend or foe. 2-year-olds, Elena reminded herself, lived in a world of simple gestures and immediate forgiveness. Ella didn't know about protocols, or emergency alerts, or cascading notifications at corporate HQ. She only knew that her magic bracelet mattered. Elena closed her eyes for a slow count of 3. She let go of the rising tide of self-reproach and lifted her chin. "I'm sorry, Ella," she whispered, though the words felt better aimed at herself. "I was doing my job." Back in row 1A, Maya's phone screen reflected the green glow of the band. A text popped up. "Alert acknowledged. SafeKids approved. Resume normal." The words were simple, but to Elena, they sounded like absolution. Bradley Cooper's voice crackled in her ear, clipped but not unkind. "Carry on, Morales. First-class operations only." She gave him a tight nod, then squared her shoulders and stepped forward. The cabin settled into its gentle rhythm once more. Soft clink of glassware, hushed conversation, the hum of the engines. Yet nothing was quite the same. Elena reminded herself of the moment she'd sworn to uphold every regulation, when she'd looked in the mirror and promised her younger self that she'd earn respect not by birthright, but by mastery of her craft. Now, witnessing Maya's quiet authority and Ella's resilient trust, she felt a deeper sense of purpose stirring. Rules mattered, yes, but empathy and flexibility mattered too. She offered Maya a polite nod as she passed by, then crouched to speak with Ella at eye level. "Hi, sweetheart," she said, her voice soft. "Your band is amazing." Ella's face broke into a tiny grin, and she held out her hand again. Elena slipped the bracelet back into place, careful to be gentle. The green light pulsed, and the cabin's monitors finally blinked off the red alert. Elena rose slowly, smoothing her uniform one more time. The incident was behind her, but its lesson would stay in her mind for every flight to come. That compassion could be as vital as protocol, and that sometimes the smallest passenger held the greatest power. As the plane leveled off, gentle clouds drifting by the windows, Elena straightened the service tray in her hands and squared her shoulders with renewed confidence. This was her world, first class, mid-air, and she intended to serve it with equal parts professionalism and humanity. Because in a cabin full of rules, it was the human moments, apology, forgiveness, understanding, that truly defined excellence. And Elena Morales was determined to become the best she could be at both. The charity lounge cabin felt more like an exclusive drawing room than an airplane interior. Rich mahogany paneling lined the walls, its glossy finish reflecting soft amber sconces that cast a warm, golden glow over every seat. Rows of ivory leather armchairs, each trimmed with burnished brass rivets, curved gently toward the aisle, creating semi-private alcoves for the flight's VIP passengers. A faint, constant hum from the overhead vents blended seamlessly with the quiet murmur of hushed conversations. And, after the morning's incident, an undercurrent of tension that neither Elena nor Maya could entirely ignore. This was no ordinary London to Cape Town flight. HorizonWave had chartered it specifically to transport a coalition of philanthropists, diplomats, and media representatives to a gala fundraising event in South Africa. Lavish welcome trays, complete with crystal flutes of champagne and delicate canapes, were already in place. A discreet sign above the galley read, "Welcome our humanitarian heroes," and every corner of the cabin had been carefully staged to reinforce the message. Generous giving, forward-thinking technology, and above all, compassion in action. Elena Morales walked the aisle with purposeful calm, the soft soles of her shoes barely audible against the plush carpet. She carried a silver tray of champagne, mindful of every rule she'd memorized during her decade with HorizonWave. No tray should be tilted more than 5 degrees, no glass ever left unattended. Yet as she approached each alcove, she caught glimpses of the SafeKids band's emerald glow on Ella's wrist. A reminder that this flight's charity mission wasn't only about money or optics, but about safeguarding lives in real time. Maya Whitfield sat near the center of the cabin, cradling Ella on her lap. She wore a tailored cream-colored suit that echoed the cabin's leather, her posture reminding everyone that she wasn't just another passenger. She was the visionary behind HorizonWave's multi-billion-dollar expansion into socially responsible aviation. Beneath her composed exterior, Maya's mind churned with logistics, the gala's keynote speech, the press coverage schedule, the silent partnerships she'd brokered to fund medical evacuations for underserved communities. Today's flight was both a symbolic gesture and a high-stakes maneuver in global philanthropy. A discreet ding announced the opening of the in-flight announcements menu on each passenger's personal touchscreen. Elena tapped the call button at the front. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard HorizonWave Flight 208, our special charity lounge service," she began, her voice warm yet authoritative. "We'll be cruising at 35,000 feet, with an expected flight time of 11 hours. Our charity partners aboard will be hosting a live panel discussion in 30 minutes. Just tap Charity Lounge Live on your screens to participate." Her announcement prompted polite applause, a ripple of excitement. The cabin settled back into its elegant rhythm, yet beneath that surface order lay subtle pressures. Elena noticed a pair of well-dressed women in one alcove leaning toward each other, whispering while stealing glances at Ella. A man in a crisp navy blazer thumbed through his tablet's financial news. HorizonWave's stock had dipped slightly pre-market, no doubt following yesterday's headline about the SafeKids band's mishap. Even the air smelled faintly of nerves and expensive perfume. On a flight like this, every misstep felt magnified, every smile calculated. Maya looked up from Ella's coloring book, an oversized, glossy pamphlet celebrating HorizonWave's newest medical outreach program. "Everything's running smoothly, Elena," she called softly, though her tone carried an unspoken question. Had Elena noticed the subtle stares? Elena inclined her head. "Absolutely, ma'am. We're on schedule and the screens are cleared of any further alerts." She offered Maya a sincere smile, before moving on to tend to another passenger, making sure the vintage blankets were folded just so and that water bottles were arranged precisely. As the plane leveled off into its cruising altitude, the charity flight assumed its intended air of calm professionalism. But both women, flight attendant and founder, knew that calm could shift in an instant. The hush of the charity lounge was a fragile veneer over the human stories and high-stakes ambitions at play. Later, when cameras captured Maya's keynote or covered Elena's impeccably timed service, few would remember the slight tremor in the air or the quick sideways glances. Yet in those early minutes of the flight, the cabin's ornate luxury and carefully engineered decorum had already set the stage for everything that would follow. A collision of protocol and compassion, power and vulnerability, and the quiet understanding that in a world built on rules, it's the stories behind the rules that truly define us. Elena paced the length of the aisle once, then twice, her nerves fraying beneath the crisp lines of her uniform. The emergency alert had faded, the cabin's monitors reset, and most passengers had turned their attention back to champagne and conversation. But to Elena, the hush that followed Ella's whimper still felt like a powder keg. Any misstep could ignite it again. She took a steadying breath and reminded herself of the flight's golden rule: respect the rules, protect every passenger. She'd resecured Ella's SafeKids band and even managed a quiet apology. Everything was back on track, until she spotted the toddler's little hand reaching again for that same band. In her mind, the rule was absolute: no unauthorized devices. This band had been an exception, approved centrally. But every time Ella fiddled with it, every time it threatened to chime another warning across the world, Elena's confidence snapped further. She squared her shoulders, fixed Maya Whitfield with a firm nod, an unspoken promise to keep the cabin under control, and approached once more. Ella sat curled in her mother's lap, engrossed in a coloring book of African elephants that HorizonWave had printed for the charity flight. A small pad of crayons lay scattered across the tray table. Elena stepped up, tray in hand, to offer fresh water. She cleared her throat softly. "Ma'am, darling," she said, smiling at Ella. Let's keep our hands to ourselves, okay? She reached out to adjust the bracelet, gently pressing down on the screen to confirm its approval status. Ella's eyes, dark and curious, fluttered up. Without warning, the toddler wiggled free of Maya's grasp and lifted her arm. Elena's hand darted out, and in a blink, her palm brushed Ella's wrist with more force than she intended. The crimson glow hadn't returned this time, but the impact registered all the same. "Hey!" Elena's voice came out harsher than she'd meant. She slapped the bracelet with a sharp sound, as if to knock it loose. Ella's head snapped back, her small face scrunching in shock. A single, raw sob escaped her lips, echoing unnervingly through the aisle. Time froze. Passengers halfway through bites of canapé inhaled sharply. A diplomat's eyes went wide behind gold-rimmed glasses. A philanthropist let her champagne flute clink loudly against her saucer. Even the flight attendants in the aisle fell silent, uncertainty flashing across their faces. Maya Whitfield leapt forward, strength overriding her surprise. She gathered Ella into her arms, voice low but steady. "Elena," she said, almost too quietly for the cabin to hear. "That was uncalled for." Elena's stomach plummeted. She felt her knees go slack, caught herself against the seat back. I'm sorry," she stammered. Her professional mask shattered. She was no longer the poised attendant smiling through turbulence. Now she was just a woman who had lost her temper, with a child. Ella's tears spilled free, warm and jagged, as Maya brushed back her curls. "It's okay, my love," Maya murmured, rocking her daughter gently. Then she turned, eyes blazing. Not with anger, but with the fierce protection of a mother. "We're here for a charity flight, Elena. This isn't about rules. It's about safety and compassion." Elena closed her eyes, shame flushing her cheeks. She lowered her gaze so she wouldn't see the toddler's tears or the cold appraisal in the cabin's watchful eyes. She remembered her childhood, the scholarship that had brought her to flight school, the pride she'd taken in every polished shoelace and charted flight map. She'd believed that by following every regulation to the letter, she would be untouchable. Yet here she was, undone by a toddler's wristband. Collecting herself, she smoothed her skirt and cleared her throat. "Ma'am, please forgive me," she managed, her voice small. "I overreacted. The band, she swallowed. "It's been a distraction." Maya's expression softened as she lifted Ella's chin. "I understand," she said. "But this flight is about more than distraction. It's about trust, between us and with every family aboard." The cabin's tension wavered. The collective breath exhaled. An older couple murmured reassurances to each other. A mother 3 rows back guided her own child's seatbelt into place. Life in first class resumed its careful rhythm, but something fundamental had shifted. The hierarchy of rules and roles had been upended by a single, human moment. Elena took a tentative step away, then paused. She realized that if she simply retreated to her station, the incident would vanish like a bad dream, erased by protocol and polite nods. But she needed to reclaim her own dignity, and perhaps earn back some trust. She approached Maya again and, bending to Ella's level, offered a soft smile. "Ella," she said gently, "I'm really sorry. Will you forgive me?" She stretched out her hand, palm open and sincere. Ella sniffled, eyes wide in surprise. Then she blinked, studied Elena's face for a moment, and offered her chubby hand in return. "Okay," she whispered. Maya gave Elena a nod of gratitude. "Thank you," she said. Then, more quietly to her daughter, "See, people can make mistakes, and they can learn from them." Elena straightened, relief and resolve coursing through her. She turned to the galley and signaled for a fresh glass of water. No garnish, just ice and still spring water, knowing that in the coming hours, she would approach every passenger with renewed humility. As the plane climbed through the pale morning sky, the blurred ground below gave way to cottony clouds. In the cabin, the aftermath of that slap settled into a new cadence. Spoken apologies, brief smiles exchanged, a shared acknowledgement that rules could never substitute for compassion. Elena pressed her fingertips to her lips, then adjusted her cap and clipped her wings firmly in place. Today's service would proceed, but she would carry the lesson with her long after the engines fell silent, that the greatest rule of all, above every protocol, was kindness, especially when no one was watching. Elena hovered near the front of the cabin, fingertips brushing the back of a seat as she fought to steady her racing heart. The emergency alert had passed, the cabin lights glowed softly again, and little Ella's band pulsed quietly in its gentle green. Yet something in the silence felt heavier now, like air before a storm. She forced a calm smile for the next passenger, offering a glass of water with practiced grace. But her thoughts spun back to that flashing red banner. The SafeKids band had streamed live straight to HorizonWave's headquarters and snapped the CEO's morning meeting into chaos. If technology could do that, what else was quietly watching on this plane? Her earpiece crackled. "Ms. Morales, hold position." Bradley Cooper's clipped voice felt cold through her skull. He wasn't angry, he was calculating. Elena released a breath she'd been holding. She'd followed orders, retracted her hand, apologized, and retreated. But something wasn't adding up. Why had the alert mattered so much? Elena's breath caught. Bradley Cooper, the airline's COO, was giving orders she'd never imagined she'd have to follow. She swallowed, squaring her shoulders. "Understood," she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. The SafeKids band on Ella's wrist pulsed faintly green, oblivious to the crisis it had precipitated. But on the overhead monitors, those that Bradley had just ordered blacked out, a faint red glow still lingered, a ghost of the emergency alert. Elena forced herself not to look. "Bravo, Morales," Bradley continued. "I'm sending Kevin Delgado to your side. He'll handle the technical lockdown. You manage the cabin. Keep passengers calm. Find that camera, any camera, and erase it." A lump rose in Elena's throat. Erase it? She'd never deleted a passenger's recording before. She was a flight attendant, not a covert cleaner. Yet here she was, charged with hiding the one thing that proved everything. The moment she'd yanked Ella's band and triggered the alert. She clipped back into her role, posture perfect, uniform unblemished, and stepped onto the aisle. Polished shoes met plush carpet as she moved methodically row by row, eyes darting for phones, tablets, or any device aimed at little Ella. A man in row 3 tapped idly on his tablet. He'd been rereading the same news headline for the past 5 minutes. SafeKids band pilot glitch sparks. Airline CEO intervention. Now he swiped through to his photo gallery. Elena's pulse spiked. She strode forward. "Excuse me, sir," she said, voice polite but firm. "Would you mind closing that app? We're clearing live feeds per airline protocol." He looked up, confusion creasing his forehead. I'm just checking the schedule." Elena offered a tight smile. "Of course. Just close any live cameras or recordings for now. Thank you." She made a note of his seat number in her head and moved on. In row 5, a teenage girl tapped her phone against her palm, screen turned toward her face. Elena hovered. "Sweetheart," she said, softer this time, "can you switch your camera off? It's airline policy." The girl blinked, hesitating. "I'm just taking photos of the view." Elena's voice tightened. "I understand, but we need to pause all recordings until we land. Please?" She held her gaze until the girl locked her phone and slipped it into her purse. A few passengers slid their devices away without comment. Others shot curious glances, whispers rippling through the seats like a silent wave. Elena could sense the cabin's unease. She felt it too, a low hum of suspicion that something big was unfolding. At the galley entrance, Kevin Delgado appeared, his crisp polo shirt unmistakable against the brushed metal backdrop. He carried a small tablet and wore an expression somewhere between apprehension and determination. "Ms. Morales," he said quietly, "I've initiated the network lockdown. The CCTV feed is secured, but the passenger devices, that's on you." Elena exhaled. Understood. She offered him a quick nod, then turned back to the cabin like a general surveying her troops. Row 8, an elderly couple. They were scrolling through the in-flight magazine on their screens. Elena slowed. "Mr. and Mrs. Harrison?" she began, catching their eyes. "We're temporarily disabling the live news channel and camera feeds for everyone's privacy. I appreciate your cooperation." Their eyes flicked up, polite smiles. "Of course, dear," Mrs. Harrison said. "Anything for safety." Elena felt a flicker of gratitude. Small victories mattered. She pressed on, moving faster now, weaving through seats. Halfway down the aisle, she caught sight of Maya Whitfield speaking softly with a diplomat. Maya's composure was unshakable. She gave Elena a slight nod and a silent plea. "Please make this right." Elena's throat tightened. She was painfully aware of her own trembling hand as she reached for a seatback pocket. Inside, she found a sleek smartphone, its camera app open. She flipped it closed and slid it out. The passenger protested quietly, but Elena's tone brooked no argument. "I'm sorry, sir. This needs to be paused." Moments later, she returned to the galley, arms full of confiscated devices. Kevin gave her a thumbs up. Bradley's voice crackled. "Good work. Stand down on interception, but keep an eye out. We'll review everything after landing." Elena nodded, relief and dread mingling. She'd done as instructed, but at what cost? She placed the devices into a lockbox, an unmarked satchel Bradley had handed her, and locked it with trembling fingers. She paused, heart still racing. In the reflection of the overhead vent, she saw her own pale face, dark circles under her eyes, sweat at her hairline. Rule follower, perfectionist, shielded by protocol. What had any of that done for her now? A soft ding signaled the start of the in-flight panel discussion. Maya stepped to the front, voice clear and confident. "Thank you all for joining our live charity session," she began. But Elena barely heard. She retreated to the galley doorway, pressing her back against the bulkhead, sliding down until she sat on the carpet, knees drawn up. Kevin crouched beside her. "Are you okay?" he asked, quietly, sincerely. Elena closed her eyes. I'm not sure what I'm doing anymore." Her voice cracked. He offered a hand. "You did what you had to do. The real decisions aren't yours. You protected this flight, protected her." He nodded toward Ella's alcove, where the toddler dozed peacefully, oblivious to the storm she'd sparked. Elena exhaled, letting his words settle. She stood, brushing crumbs of carpet from her uniform. "Thank you, Kevin." He gave her a small smile, then disappeared down the aisle to check on another device. Elena straightened her cap, touched her wings, and stepped back into service mode. The cabin's hush had deepened, a quiet apology after chaos. She offered champagne to a seated dignitary with a genuine smile, letting the polished motions of her training carry her through. As the plane cruised on toward Cape Town, Elena knew the tension would only climb from here. The cover-up was underway, and she was its reluctant foot soldier. But she also knew she wasn't alone. Kevin had her back. Maya's silent support was real, and even the passengers, those who complied without complaint, fooled her into believing that compassion could survive inside strict protocol. Above the clouds, the aircraft sliced through pale blue sky. Inside, in an aisle lined with expensive seats and hushed uncertainty, Elena Morales prepared for whatever came next, her heart still pounding, but her resolve clearer than ever. Elena sank into the jump seat in the aft galley, the din of the charity lounge muted behind her. She closed her eyes and replayed the morning's chaos, the red flashing alert, the CEO's horrified expression, Maya's steady reproach. Her mind buzzed with questions about the band, about her own reflexes, and about the murky line between safety and surveillance. Outside, the cabin lights dimmed for the in-flight panel. Maya Chen's voice crackled through the PA. "Welcome everyone to our live charity lounge briefing. Today, we'll explore how HorizonWave is leveraging technology to protect the youngest flyers. Elena's shoulders stiffened. She needed context, and fast. In a quiet corner of the cabin, Maya Chen fixtured her tablet, loading the latest investigative dossier that had kept her up for nights. As HorizonWave's chief correspondent, Maya had stumbled onto the SafeKids wristband project months earlier. What began as a heartwarming human interest pitch, parents comforted by GPS tracking and automated vitals monitoring, had taken a darker turn in her reporting. Maya tapped through a redacted memo dated 2 years ago. The presidential pitch from HorizonWave's Innovation Lab. The project had been blessed by the board with a $5 million seed fund, lauded as a life-saving initiative. But buried in the attachments was a private briefing for senior executives. Enable encrypted live streaming to HQ. Authorize automatic override of local controls. That line had leapt off the page. Override local controls. Maya scrolled further, unearthing internal emails from Kevin Delgado. He'd warned that the band's firmware could be exploited, not just for emergencies, but to monitor and control VIP movements. Bradley Cooper, the COO, had replied curtly, "Only authorized under life-threatening scenarios. Ensure no leaks." Yet the protocol leak had arrived on Maya's desk anyway. A whistleblower's copy of the override key, noting that any band activation would ping the HQ network by default. Her pulse quickened as she read Bradley's follow-up. "This is our fail-safe. If a child in the founder's family triggers an alert, we need eyes on them, immediately." Maya's stomach twisted. A fail-safe to watch the Whitfields, under the guise of safety, and a powerful deterrent against anyone who might challenge HorizonWave's authority. Back on the plane, Elena listened to Maya speak confidently to her captive audience. The SafeKids band isn't just a tracker. It's a real-time lifeline for parents and a direct line into corporate command. She watched her fellow cabin passengers lean forward, eyes flicking to Ella's glowing wrist. Elena's throat tightened. Suddenly, every curious stare felt like scrutiny of her own actions. When the briefing ended, murmurs rippled down the rows. Maya stepped down, and Elena approached her, curiosity edged with fear. "Miss Chen," she said quietly, voice hesitant. "Can we talk?" Maya nodded, gesturing toward the galley. Inside, Elena's uniform looked as crisp as ever, but her eyes betrayed her. Your briefing," she began. "I understand this project wasn't just about safety. I saw the override protocols, the streaming to HQ. Why would they build that in?" Maya's expression was measured. Because control is a powerful incentive. If people know every move can be watched, they follow the rules. But it's not just about discipline. It's about loyalty. She paused. "When that band lit up, you reacted to enforce protocol. But you didn't know you were enforcing an executive order backed by millions in corporate PR." Elena pressed her palms together as if in prayer. "I was following procedure, but it felt wrong. I keep thinking, did I nearly harm that child just to protect a PR stunt?" Her voice cracked. Maya put a hand on Elena's shoulder. "That project started with good intentions. HorizonWave wanted to pioneer child safety in flight. You should know, they tested the prototype in the Caribbean, rescued a lost toddler within minutes. That story sold 100 million impressions." She sighed. "But then, as any billion-dollar company does, they saw leverage. They added the override. They wanted to ensure no bad press, no rogue alerts. And they gated it behind founders' family privileges." Elena closed her eyes. Her own memory flickered back. The lunchroom briefing where Bradley had emphasized shielding the Whitfields at all costs. The clipped directive. "If you must, erase the feed. No footage leaves the aircraft." She opened her eyes, meeting Maya's gaze. "I was terrified of losing my job, of being blamed for a system glitch." She touched the back of her hand to her forehead. "I thought I was keeping everyone safe, but I was protecting an image, a brand." Maya nodded. "That's the catch-22 of corporate CSR. The public faces the mission statement. The executives hold the override key. The people who benefit from the promise rarely see the control mechanisms. Her voice softened. But you're different, Elena. You care about passengers as people. A distant chime signaled the start of the in-flight meal service. Maya checked her watch, then turned. Thank you for listening, and for asking questions. That's how we hold power to account. She squeezed Elena's hand. I'll take it from here. Elena stepped back into the aisle, just as lunch trays clattered into place. As she offered a gourmet soup to a seated donor, she carried a new awareness. Everything she did now mattered twice as much. Every rule she enforced, every apology she offered, every ounce of empathy she extended. Because she'd glimpsed the underbelly of that golden veneer, and she would not let protocol blind her to humanity again. At the next row, she paused, gently folding a napkin into a swan. She thought of Ella's wide eyes, and of Maya's calm determination. The SafeKids band had revealed more than a system flaw. It had shone a light on how easily safety can slip into surveillance. Elena inhaled deeply, steadying herself as the plane glided smoothly above turquoise seas. She straightened her cap, clipped her wings firmly, and offered the tray with a sincere smile. In the quiet of that moment, she pledged to safeguard lives and hearts on every flight she served from then on. Elena hauled herself back into the aisle, heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. She'd just finished corralling the last of the confiscated devices into the lockbox when she spotted him. A man in row 9, lean and unassuming, holding his phone steady. Camera pointed squarely at Ella's alcove. His name tag read Mr. Patel, and something in the set of his shoulders made Elena's blood run cold. She remembered the slight bow he'd offered Maya earlier, the quick, "Thank you, ma'am," when she passed. Now, he wasn't a compliant passenger. He was the one person she hadn't managed to reach. She straightened her cap, swallowed her dread, and approached him with measured steps. "Sir," she began, voice low but firm, "can I help you with something?" Mr. Patel's dark eyes flicked up from the phone. For a second, Elena thought he might turn the camera away, but instead, he tapped the screen. A grainy video played. The moment Elena's gloved hand had yanked the bracelet, the red emergency alert banner flashing across the cabin monitors. Then the second clip, Maya's calm intervention, the steam of tension rising off Elena's face. Elena's chest constricted. She recognized herself, frozen in panic, apologizing to Ella, fingertips trembling. "Sir," she said again, attempting a polite smile that felt as brittle as thin ice. "We asked everyone to pause recordings." He didn't back down. He pressed play, full volume. The cabin's hush dissolved into the chime of the alert sound echoing through the speakers, raw and unfiltered. Passengers turned in their seats. A couple in front clutched their scarves. The diplomat in row 4 raised an eyebrow. Even Bradley Cooper, standing near the galley, paused mid-step. "Elena's right," Mr. Patel said, voice calm. "You did ask us to close our cameras, but I think people deserve to see everything." He lifted the phone, angle tilted down so everyone in the aisle could watch. "This is corporate hypocrisy at 35,000 feet. Elena felt her knees threaten to buckle. This was the moment she dreaded. The camera she couldn't intercept. The proof she couldn't delete. She opened her mouth to protest, but the words caught in her throat as the video cut to Maya hugging Ella, brushing back the toddler's curls. Maya stepped forward, calm yet resolute. "Thank you for sharing, Mr. Patel," she said. Her voice carried through the cabin without amplification, steady and authoritative. "That clip is crucial. It shows exactly what happened." Elena's skin prickled. The hush that followed was heavy with unspoken questions. Passengers leaned forward, eyes bright with curiosity and a flicker of what looked like justification. Here was the evidence Bradley and Elena had tried so hard to contain, now playing on every screen. She felt Bradley's hand at her elbow. "Stay back," he murmured, voice low. "Let Maya handle this." He gave her a tight nod. Elena exhaled, stepping aside, watching as the situation spiraled into its next phase. Maya raised her hand for silence. "Everyone," she began, "I know you have questions." She glanced at Mr. Patel, giving him a respectful nod. Mr. Patel has provided critical footage that reveals more than a safety malfunction. It exposes an attempt to hide a moment that should have been addressed openly. A murmur ran through the cabin like a sudden breeze. Elena's gaze locked on Maya's. Even under pressure, Maya radiated calm clarity. She knelt beside Ella's seat and scooped up the toddler, holding her close. "This band was designed to protect children," Maya continued. "It's not a tool for corporate spin or concealment. Today, it did exactly what it promised. It kept my daughter safe and reminded us all that safety must come before secrecy." Elena swallowed hard, absorbing Maya's words. She'd enforced the blackout to shield the brand, as Bradley had ordered. Now, here was the true brand. Transparent, accountable, and grounded in human dignity. On the monitors, the video rewound and replayed. Elena's initial snap, Maya's intervention, the red glow slowing into green. Passengers exchanged glances, some shaking their heads in discomfort, others nodding in approval. The cabin's atmosphere had shifted from tense neutrality to active engagement. Mr. Patel pocketed his phone with a composed click. He turned to Elena. "Thank you for following protocol, Ms. Morales," he said, voice gentle but unyielding. "But protocols aren't a substitute for honesty." Elena felt a wash of relief and regret crash over her in equal measure. She stepped forward, voice quavering but sincere. "I'm sorry," she said, looking directly at the passengers. "I was trying to protect everyone, and the company I love. But I lost sight of why we're here, to serve people, not protect images." The apology landed like a breath of fresh air. A woman in row 6 gave Elena an encouraging nod. A man in row 2 offered a small smile. Bradley cleared his throat, stepping up. "We appreciate your patience," he said. "We'll address this fully once we land." He shot a brief glance at Maya, whose approving smile told him there was no going back to cover-ups. Maya cradled Ella in her arms and faced the cabin. "Thank you everyone for understanding," she said. "We'll continue our service with transparency and care, and let this be the real headline. Compassion under pressure." A ripple of applause rose from the seats. Not loud, but genuine. Elena closed her eyes, letting the sound wash over her. In a cabin where rules had once become chains, people were now choosing empathy and truth. She looked down at Ella, who reached up to pat the plush elephant nestled in her arms. The toddler's innocent trust felt like redemption. Elena met Maya's eyes. Maya gave a slight nod of solidarity. Elena straightened her shoulders and returned to her duties with a new purpose. The devices in her lockbox waited, for now, but she no longer felt the urgency to hide every frame. She had learned that some moments needed to be shared, not erased. As the charity lounge settled back into its elegant hum, passengers resumed their conversations, this time richer, heavier with empathy. The cabin lights glowed softly, highlighting polished wood and brass. But under that warm glow lay something stronger, a collective commitment to honesty and humanity, forged in crisis. Mr. Patel returned to his seat with quiet dignity, and Elena poured him a glass of water as a small gesture of thanks. He accepted it with a nod. Above the clouds, the aircraft pressed on, carrying more than a coalition of philanthropists and dignitaries. It carried a newfound sense of purpose, and down the aisle, Elena Morales served each passenger with a blend of professionalism and genuine care that no protocol could ever mandate. Elena felt a strange calm as the in-flight Wi-Fi icon blinked on her tablet. The cabin had recovered from the earlier revelation, passengers sipping champagne and scrolling through the Charity Lounge Live discussion. But every hum of conversation carried a new undercurrent, anticipation. What happened next would change everything. Maya Whitfield closed her laptop with a soft click and rose from her seat. She tapped the in-flight broadcast icon, fingers poised over the publish button. Behind her calm exterior, Her pulse raced. All morning, she'd gathered the evidence. Kevin Delgado's unedited footage, Bradley Cooper's internal emails authorizing override protocols, and the financial filings showing HorizonWave's $2.3 billion charitable fund, money earmarked for community outreach, now juxtaposed with a cover-up. But would the world care? She found Elena waiting in the aisle, gloved hand hovering over her cap's brim. "It's time," Maya said quietly. Elena nodded, heart pounding. "I'll be right here." Maya tapped publish, and in an instant, the video went live on HorizonWave's corporate network and detonated across social media. The SafeKids band alert, the slap, her mother's intervention. Every angle streamed in crystal clarity. A chyron appeared beneath the footage. HorizonWave's $5 million SafeKids pilot, lifesaver or surveillance. In row 5, a woman gasped. A man in a linen suit set down his rosé. A flurry of notifications pinged on everyone's tablets. The cabin's ambient hush fractured into whispers. "Did you see that?" She posted it mid-flight. "I'm sharing this right now." Elena watched monitors above each seat refresh with a clip and a link to Maya's Exposé. Bradley Cooper's eyes widened as he realized the magnitude. The story had jumped from the private corporate feed to every major news outlet within seconds. He tapped rapidly on his tablet. Emails, Slack channels, emergency alerts back at headquarters. Maya stepped to the front of the cabin and raised her hand. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began in a firm, clear voice, "thank you for your patience. You've just witnessed the full truth about the SafeKids program and its hidden override. What you saw wasn't a glitch. It was a design decision to control information about our most vulnerable flyers." A wave of murmur rippled through first class. Elena felt the hairs on her arms prickle. Passengers peered over headrests, some nodding thoughtfully, others frowning at their screens. Maya continued. HorizonWave's charitable fund is $2.3 billion strong. A portion, $5 million, was invested in SafeKids to protect children at 35,000 feet. That was a noble goal. But when the board insisted on an encrypted live stream to corporate HQ and override privileges for VIP families, it crossed a line. Safety is sacred. Surveillance isn't. Down the aisle, Kevin Delgado raised his tablet to show Bradley's draft memo. Override local controls. Authorized under life-threatening scenarios only. The memo text scrolled, plain and damning. Elena's stomach churned. She had helped execute these orders, seize phones, blackout feeds, believing she was protecting people. Now she realized she'd been protecting a facade. Maya's voice softened as she scooped Ella into her arms. "This is my daughter," she said, voice catching with emotion. "And I asked for the SafeKids band because every parent deserves peace of mind. But I won't stand for our company turning peace of mind into a tool of power. We're here to serve people, not to spy on them." A smattering of applause broke out, a quiet yet powerful affirmation. Elena glanced around as fellow flight attendants nodded in solidarity. Passengers tapped share or like, sending Maya's post viral. Outside the cabin window, the clouds drifted oblivious to the digital storm unfolding inside. Bradley cleared his throat, stepping forward. His posture was rigid, forced calm in his voice. "Ms. Whitfield, I appreciate your transparency. We'll address this with the board immediately." But his eyes met Maya's for a fraction of a second, and Elena saw the flicker of panic there too. Maya gave a curt nod. "I'll be in touch, Bradley, and I suggest you check your email." She turned back to the cabin. "Thank you all. Now let's continue our journey to Cape Town with the knowledge that honesty never grounds us. It sets us free." Elena exhaled, relief mixing with awe. She felt Maya's words resonate in the polished wood panels and brass fixtures around her. This was more than corporate theater. It was a watershed moment in flight history. As the cabin returned to its service hum, Elena approached Maya at her seat. "That was incredible," she whispered. "You just changed everything." Maya smiled tiredly. "We did. Safety must be transparent, or it's just control." She looked at Ella, whose big eyes reflected the cabin's warm glow. "And we have work to do." Elena met Maya's gaze, determination flaring in her chest. She felt the weight of her uniform differently now, no longer just a symbol of order, but a pledge to serve with integrity. "I'm with you," she said softly. Behind them, passengers resumed their meals, but conversations had new depth. They quoted Maya's statements, checked their devices, exchanged nods of respect. The charity lounge felt transformed, no longer a staged display of goodwill, but a real community bound by truth. Above the clouds, the Boeing 787 glided toward Africa, carrying more than dignitaries and philanthropists. It carried a lesson that real power belonged to those who spoke up, who shared the truth, and who refused to let safety be compromised by secrecy. And down the aisle, Elena Morales served the next course. Not just soup or salad, but the promise of genuine care earned through honesty. In that moment, the turning point was clear. The flight was no longer about charity optics. It was about courage in action. Elena hovered at the galley doorway, watching Maya settle Ella into her mother's arms, when her earpiece crackled with an urgent dispatcher alert. She dipped her head and slipped away from the cabin, heart pounding as she tapped her comm button. "Morales, report to London HQ immediately," came Bradley Cooper's clipped voice. "We've got regulators on the line and the market's tanking." London headquarters. Moments later in Horizon, Wave's glass-walled boardroom overlooking the Thames, phones were ringing off the hook. A contingent from the Department of Transportation, joined by the UK Civil Aviation Authority, demanded an immediate briefing on the SafeKids override protocol and live stream incident. Executives clustered around a circular table. David Whitfield, pale but composed. Bradley Cooper, face like thunder. And a flurry of legal advisors scrambling to arrange on-the-spot compliance documents. Outside, the trading floor was in chaos. On multiple screens, HorizonWave's ticker symbol flashed bright red. Pre-market trading had opened with panic selling, shares plunging 14% within minutes, enough to trigger an automatic circuit breaker halt. A scrolling banner on Bloomberg proclaimed, "HorizonWave stock halted after safety streaming scandal. Market meltdown and investor revolt." By 8:02 a.m., institutional investors were calling for emergency action. William Kingsley, representing a $3.2 billion equity stake, sent his risk committee memo. "Pending a full board review, we demand immediate suspension of any executive involved and a transparent investigation." His stern ultimatum hit the trading desk like a thunderclap. Without his support, the company faced further downdrafts at the opening bell. David Whitfield exchanged a tense glance with Bradley. "We need decisive action," he said, voice low but firm. "This can't wait until after the flight lands. Emergency board meeting and executive shakeup." Within 20 minutes, the board convened. Lawyers read out regulator demands. The CFO projected loss estimates based on early trading data. Pressure was relentless. Fines for protocol breaches, potential civil suits from passengers, even congressional inquiries on the horizon. David rose, chair's gavel in hand. "We must restore trust immediately." He looked at Bradley. "Effective now, you're placed on administrative leave pending full investigation. You and any executive complicit in the override protocol will step aside." The board voted unanimously. Bradley's features drained of color as corporate security escorted him from the room. Behind him, two senior directors implicated in the cover-up were similarly sidelined. Public statements and regulatory compliance. At 8:45 a.m., HorizonWave released a public statement. In light of recent events, HorizonWave is fully cooperating with the Department of Transportation and Civil Aviation Authority investigations. We have placed key executives on leave and will conduct a transparent internal audit. Our commitment to passenger safety and privacy remains unwavering. Regulators responded within the hour, announcing a formal inquiry into the override protocol's legality and the SafeKids pilot's data privacy safeguards. Fines and corrective mandates loomed. Maya's new mandate and Elena's vindication. Meanwhile, David Whitfield tapped a secure comm line. "Maya, I want you leading our new passenger experience and safety office, effective immediately." In the empty boardroom, Maya accepted the informal but powerful promotion. It was a tacit acknowledgement that her values had preserved the company's soul when protocols alone would have failed. Down in Cape Town, Elena's phone buzzed. A text from headquarters. "Your actions upheld our values. HR will file a commendation. See you Monday." Relief flooded her chest. She'd gone from scapegoat to silent hero. Cabin refocused on compassion. Back in the charity lounge, Maya returned to the aisle, Ella snug on her hip. She faced the passengers, now a captive audience of philanthropists, diplomats, and press. "Thank you for your patience," Maya said, voice steady. "Today's events prove that transparency and genuine care must guide every decision we make. We will rebuild trust in the air and on the ground." A warm ripple of applause followed. Elena stepped forward with a fresh tray of sparkling water, offering it with a genuine smile. The cabin's atmosphere had shifted, from stunned speculation to hopeful collaboration. Climax's afterglow. As the flight descended toward Cape Town, the late morning sun dappling the ocean below, Elena slid into her jump seat for landing. She watched Maya tuck Ella under her chin, the toddler's eyes heavy with sleep but shining with security. The SafeKids band glowed softly green, no longer a trigger for scandal, but a symbol of lessons learned. Elena exhaled, letting the tension drain away. Today had been a crucible. Regulators demanding answers, markets punishing missteps, a boardroom purge, and a public reckoning. But amid it all, the human story of a flight attendant who dared to care, a mother who dared to speak the truth, and a toddler who reminded everyone why safety matters, had prevailed. In that moment, high above the African coast, corporate crises became personal victories. And for everyone on board, it was clear. When compassion and transparency collide, they create a force more enduring than any protocol. Maya settled Ella into her mother's arms just as the seatbelt sign dinged, the signal that their journey was nearly over. Around them, the cabin's tension had eased into a gentle hum of relief. Passengers exchanged warm smiles and knowing glances, as if sharing in a quiet victory. At the front of the aisle, Elena stood with her service tray drifting to her side. Bradley Cooper had already been escorted off the aircraft in Cape Town, his credentials revoked and his office sealed pending further inquiry. News of his effective dismissal had filtered back to every seat via in-flight announcements, and a hush of satisfaction rippled through the cabin. Maya tapped her earpiece once, then spoke into the PA system with quiet authority. "Ladies and gentlemen, I want to personally thank you for your patience and understanding today. As part of our resolution, HorizonWave has implemented the following changes immediately. Bradley Cooper is on administrative leave. Key members of the previous leadership team have been replaced, and I've been appointed to lead our new Office of Passenger Safety and Transparency." A ripple of applause followed, not loud, but genuine. Elena felt a familiar warmth in her chest, a sense of rightness that only comes when justice quietly arrives. Maya continued, "We're also committing an additional $10 million to expand the SafeKids pilot, ensuring it remains a tool for protection, not control. That program will now be governed by an independent oversight board, including passenger representatives and child safety experts." Several philanthropists nodded appreciatively, recalling earlier whispers about the fund's redirection to actual child rescue missions rather than corporate spin. A diplomat leaned over to her neighbor and murmured, "Finally, the kind of accountability we've been advocating." Elena watched from her station as Maya tucked a stray curl behind Ella's ear. The toddler's eyes drooped with sleep, exhaustion chased away by the day's extraordinary catharsis. Maya caught Elena's gaze and offered a small, triumphant smile, one that said, "We did this together." With Bradley's removal, HorizonWave's stock had rebounded modestly pre-market. a sign that investors value decisive action over cover-ups. On personal devices, passengers were refreshing news feeds to see headlines like HorizonWave purges executives after safety scandal, Founder's daughter inspires reform. Even the most skeptical traveler couldn't suppress a nod at that headline. In the cabin, service resumed with a renewed spirit. Water and coffee delivered with extra warmth, freshly pressed blankets offered without prompt, and genuine small talk that felt less scripted. Elena moved down the aisle, pausing at each alcove to offer a final gesture of hospitality. "Is there anything else I can get you before we land?" she'd ask, and the answers came with heartfelt thanks. In row 7, Mr. Patel raised his glass in a silent toast. Elena caught his eye and returned the gesture. It felt symbolic, a mutual acknowledgement of shared responsibility and mutual respect. Back in her alcove, Maya stood and addressed the cabin one last time. "Before we touch down, I'd like to invite you to join me in supporting our new community outreach initiative," she said, indicating a link on the seatback screens. "Every contribution, no matter how small, will fund educational flights for underserved children and life-saving medical transport." A fresh round of applause followed, mingled with tears from more than one philanthropist moved by the day's transformation. Elena slipped to Maya's side and murmured, "You turned a crisis into real change." Maya rested a hand on her shoulder. "We all did, especially you." Ella stirred, rubbing her eyes, and reached out for Elena's gloved hand. "Bye-bye, Sky," she whispered, offering a tiny wave. Elena crouched to meet her gaze and waved back with a grin. As the wheels touched down in Cape Town, the cabin lights brightened and the engine's roar softened to a steady tremor. Passengers gathered their belongings, quiet chatter punctuated by smiles and nods of farewell. On the jet bridge, ground staff lined up to greet them, holding signs that read, "Welcome to Cape Town. Welcome to a safer horizon." Elena watched the first passengers disembark, her heart full. In 12 chapters, they'd navigated shock, empathy, conflict, and finally redemption. Now, at the end of this flight, true justice had been served, not with violence or spectacle, but with transparent accountability and genuine compassion. She straightened her uniform one last time, clipped her wings in place, and turned to Maya. "Ready for the next chapter?" Maya smiled, picking up Ella and tucking her under one arm. "Always." Together, they stepped off the plane into the South African sun, leaving behind a first-class cabin that had witnessed a quiet revolution in how power and safety can and must come together. The cabin door opened onto a gentle Cape Town morning, not just the end of a flight, but the beginning of something larger. As the last passenger stepped off, Elena lingered at the threshold, watching crew members fold blankets that now carried the new Safe Skies for Kids logo. It felt surreal. 12 chapters of shock, conflict, and reform had led here to a quiet rebirth of the airline's promise. Across the aisle, Maya Whitfield knelt beside Ella, who reached out to touch the brass plaque that now read, "Rising Justice. HorizonWave's community aircraft. Months of planning had culminated in this." An entire jet dedicated to free medical transport, school trips for underserved communities, and emergency relief missions. The aircraft's livery showcased children's artwork from around the world, each drawing a testament to hope. Today, the very cabin that once saw a scandal now bristled with optimism. Elena adjusted her cap and slipped into her service vest for one final duty, distributing commemorative pins to each departing passenger. The tiny enamel badges bore a simple icon, a stylized child's hand in flight, symbolizing the program's blend of compassion and accountability. An elderly couple accepted theirs with misty eyes. A diplomat paused, pinning it near her lapel with pride. Even Mr. Patel, who'd captured that pivotal footage, stopped to shake Elena's hand and say, "You made a difference." In the galley, Bradley Cooper's voice crackled over the intercom, no longer commanding lockdowns, but announcing, Thank you for joining us on this inaugural mission of Rising Justice. Next stop, Nairobi, where we'll deliver medical supplies to remote clinics. His tone carried genuine warmth now, reflecting the airline's transformed culture. Outside, ground crew lined up to applaud as Maya carried Ella down the air stair. Newspapers fluttered with headlines like, HorizonWave's Rising Justice plane takes flight, from scandal to service. Cameras flashed, but this time the story was about redemption and real impact rather than cover-ups. Maya paused at the bottom step, lifted Ella high, and together they waved to the gathering crowd, a portrait of resilience that needed no commentary. Elena watched, heart swelling. She'd joined HorizonWave with a dedication to protocol and emerged with a deeper commitment to people. The lessons of the past hours, balancing rules with empathy, confronting power with transparency, had shaped her into the kind of attendant who served not just meals, but dignity. A year later, the results spoke for themselves. 87% increase in passenger trust scores for child-friendly service. 150 community flights completed, transporting over 2,000 children to educational programs. A 24-hour hotline staffed by child welfare experts, now integrated into every flight plan. Numbers mattered, but so did the stories. A young girl reunited with her foster mother after an emergency medevac. A class of students visiting their first science museum. A nurse delivering vaccines deep in the bush. Each mission a reminder that justice and kindness could take flight together. Elena gathered her thoughts as she stepped onto the jet bridge one last time. She turned to Maya, who stood smiling. Ella, asleep in her arms. "We did it," Elena said softly. Maya nodded, tucking a loose curl behind Ella's ear. "We held ourselves to the promise we made when we first launched SafeKids. That safety isn't just technology, but trust. And now we're delivering on it." Ella stirred, opening one eye to blink at Elena. "Ready for takeoff again?" Maya teased. The toddler giggled, waving her hands like tiny wings. Elena took a final look at the cabin, the polished wood, the brass accents now softened by that child's innocent laughter. Then she turned toward the arrival hall, pin in place, ready to greet the next wave of travelers who would hear this story and believe in a more just world. If you believe every child deserves safety, and every company can choose compassion over cover-ups, hit that like button. Subscribe for more powerful stories of real-world justice in flight, and share to spread the wings of change.